The black void of space stretched endlessly in all directions around the mining world of Kepler-7. Two orange suns cast their dying light across the planet's surface, where massive extraction machines worked day and night to pull precious metals from the rocky ground. The workers below were not free. They had been slaves for so long that most could not remember what freedom felt like. Above the planet, 3 alien warships moved in slow circles like hungry sharks. These were Zephyrian patrol cruisers, each. One grown from living coral and brain tissue rather than built from metal and circuits. Their hulls pulsed with soft blue light as they communicated with each other through thought alone. The largest ship was called Singing Death, and its captain had been patrolling the system for over 20 years without seeing any real action. Captain Zethmo stood in the center of his ship's brain chamber, his forearms connected to nerve cables that let him feel everything his vessel experienced. The bioship's senses were his senses. Its pain would be his pain. Its death would be his death. This was the Zephyrian way, and it had made them the most feared warriors in the galaxy for 300 years. The Zephyrian Empire controlled over 2,000 star systems. Their bioships could heal from battle damage, think faster than computers, and work together like parts of a single giant organism. No enemy had ever defeated them in open battle. Most species surrendered the moment Zephyrian ships appeared in their skies. But today was different. Today, something new had come to their corner of space 6 hours earlier. A human warship had entered the outer edge of the Kepler system. The ship was called Unease Defiance, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Where Zephyrian vessels were curved and flowing like sea creatures, the human ship was all sharp angles and hard edges. Where bioships were grown, this vessel had been built from steel and determination. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the tactical display with calm eyes. He was 35 years old, with brown hair starting to show gray at the temples. His uniform was simple blue and black, with no fancy decorations. Behind him, his crew of 47 men and women worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Morrison had been chosen for this mission because he could make hard decisions without hesitation. Earth's leaders needed someone who could start a war if necessary, and Morrison was that man. He had studied the Zephyrian Empire for 2 years, learning their strengths and weaknesses. Today, he would put that knowledge to the test. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at the sensor station, her fingers moving across holographic controls that showed her everything happening within 1,000,000 kilometers. She was 28, with red hair tied back in a regulation bun and green eyes that missed nothing. Right now, those eyes were focused on the 3 Zephyrian patrol ships. "Captain," she said softly, "the aliens are following Pattern 7. Just like our intelligence said they would." Morrison nodded. The Zephyrians had ruled for so long that they had become predictable. Their patrol routes never changed. Their reaction times had slowed. They expected fear from every species they encountered, and that expectation had made them lazy. At the engineering station, Chief Pete Davidson monitored the ship's power systems. He was a big man with thick arms and a beard that regulations said was too long, but nobody bothered to argue with the man who kept their fusion reactor running. Right now, that reactor was producing only 15% of its normal power output. "Reactor holding steady at minimal burn," Davidson reported. "We're running quieter than a whisper." The Defiance had been drifting dark and cold for 6 hours, using just enough power to keep the crew alive. The ship's hull was coated with special materials that absorbed sensor beams instead of reflecting them. To the Zephyrians, they were invisible. Commander Lisa Brooks stood behind Morrison's chair, reviewing the mission plan one final time. She was the ship's executive officer, a stern woman with black hair and sharp features who had earned her rank through 15 years of military service. She knew that what they were about to do would change everything. Final count shows 10,000 civilians in the mining facility, she reported. 8,000 are enslaved workers from various species. 2,000 are Zephyrian overseers and their families. Morrison studied the intelligence data on his personal screen. The mining facility was built into a mountain on Kepler-7's northern continent. Massive tunnels ran deep underground, where alien slaves worked in terrible conditions to extract rare metals for the Empire. The facility was lightly defended because the Zephyrians never expected anyone to attack them. The human crew had been preparing for this moment for 8 months. Every person on the ship knew their job perfectly. They had run the mission plan hundreds of times in training simulations. But simulations were not real battle, and real battle was what they were about to face. Communications Officer Ben Taylor adjusted his headset and checked the translation programs one more time. He was young, only 24, but he had a gift for alien languages that made him invaluable. When the time came to speak with the freed slaves, he would be their voice. Translation protocols loaded and ready, he reported. I can communicate with all 17 species currently imprisoned in the facility. Morrison looked around his bridge at these men and women who had volunteered for what might be a suicide mission. Earth's government had given them the best ship humans could build, filled it with experimental weapons that had never been tested in real combat, and sent them to pick a fight with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The reason was simple. Humanity would not accept a galaxy where slavery was normal. Earth's leaders had tried diplomacy first, sending messages to the Zephyrian capital asking for peaceful contact. The Empire's response had been swift and clear: surrender or be conquered. There would be no third option, so Earth had chosen to make its own option. All stations report ready, Morrison said, his voice carrying to every person on the ship. This is what we came here to do. The galaxy thinks humans are just another primitive species that will bow down to the Empire. Today, we show them they're wrong. The twin suns of Kepler-7 were setting behind the planet's horizon, casting long shadows across the mining facility. In those shadows, thousands of enslaved beings continued their endless work, not knowing that freedom was only minutes away. Morrison gave the order that would start humanity's war with the stars, bring us to full stealth approach, target the Zephyrian patrol ships. On my mark, we light them up and show this galaxy what humans can do. The Defiance began to move, silent as death and twice as determined. Her crew worked with the precision of a machine and the courage of warriors who fought for something greater than themselves. Behind them, Earth waited to see if her children could survive their first battle among the stars. Ahead of them, the Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that the age of easy conquest was over. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The attack began at exactly 0347 ship time when Lieutenant Amy Carter pressed a single button on her control panel. Across the vast emptiness of space, invisible waves of electromagnetic energy spread out from the UNS Defiance like ripples in a pond. These waves carried a very specific frequency that had been calculated by Earth's best scientists after years of studying captured Zephyrian technology. The electromagnetic pulse hit the 3 alien patrol ships at the speed of light. In an instant, every bioneural connection in their living hulls went dead. The ships had been grown with nervous systems like giant sea creatures, and those nervous systems were suddenly cut off from their brains. Captain Zethmol felt the pulse like a knife through his skull. One moment he could see, hear, and feel everything his ship experienced. The next moment there was only darkness and silence. The nerve cables connecting him to his vessel's brain carried nothing but static. Around him, his 200 crew members stumbled and fell as their own neural links to the ship failed. What happened? His first officer cried out in the Zephyrian language, his voice shaking with fear. I cannot feel the ship's heart beating. Zethmol tried to reconnect with his vessel's senses, but there was nothing there. The singing death was still alive, but it was blind, deaf, and mute. For a Zephyrian captain, this was worse than death. It was like having your eyes and ears torn away while your body continued to live. On the second patrol ship, Captain Vorthka was experiencing the same nightmare. Her biocruiser called Living Storm had gone completely dark. The ship's living hull was trying to regenerate the damaged neural pathways, but the process would take hours that they did not have. The third ship, smallest of the patrol vessels, began to drift helplessly through space. Its young captain had never experienced anything like this. In 300 years of Zephyrian dominance, no enemy had ever found a way to attack their bioship's nervous systems. Aboard the Defiance, Morrison watched his tactical display light up with target indicators. 3 enemy vessels, each one now helpless as a newborn animal. The electromagnetic pulse had worked perfectly, but he knew the effect would not last long. Zephyrian bioships could heal from almost any damage, including neural disruption. All targets are blind and unable to maneuver, Carter reported, her voice steady despite the importance of the moment. We have maybe 20 minutes before they start to recover. Morrison nodded and turned to his weapons officer. Begin the attack. Railguns first, then missiles. I want those ships disabled, not destroyed. We need to send a message, not commit genocide. The Defiance's rail cannons came online with a deep humming sound that vibrated through the ship's hull. These weapons used magnetic fields to accelerate solid metal projectiles to incredible speeds. The projectiles themselves were simple chunks of tungsten steel, but they hit with the force of small nuclear bombs. The first rail gunshot traveled at 12% of light speed, crossing the distance to the singing death in less than 2 seconds. The tungsten projectile punched through the bioship's living hull like a needle through cloth, creating a perfectly round hole that went completely through the vessel from one side to the other. The alien ship's scream echoed across subspace frequencies as its living tissue began to die around the wound. Bioships felt pain just like any living creature, and the singing death was experiencing agony beyond description. Its crew was thrown around inside as the vessel lost attitude control and began to tumble through space. The second railgun shot hit the Living Storm near its engine cluster. The projectile tore through the bioship's propulsion organs, spraying alien blood and tissue into the vacuum of space. Captain Vorthka felt her ship's death throes through. Her neural link as the connection flickered back to life just in time to experience the creature's final moments. The third Zephyrian vessel, seeing its 2 companions crippled, tried to flee despite being nearly blind. Its captain managed to restore partial engine power and began accelerating away from the human ship. But the biocruiser was flying without sensors, like a man running through the dark. Carter tracked the fleeing ship with cold efficiency. Third target is attempting to escape. Bearing 27 Mark IV, accelerating at 3 Gs. Lock missiles and fire. Morrison ordered. 2 quantum torpedoes launched from the Defiance's forward tubes. These weapons were humanity's newest invention, using principles of quantum mechanics that most alien species did not understand. The torpedoes could phase in and out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to defend against. The fleeing Zephyrian ship never saw them coming. The first torpedo materialized inside the bioship's engine compartment and exploded, destroying the creature's ability to run. The second torpedo struck the vessel's brain center, killing the ship's consciousness instantly. Within 17 minutes. Of the first shot, all 3 Zephyrian patrol vessels were either destroyed or floating helplessly in space. The human ship had not taken a single hit in return, but Morrison's mission was not complete. The patrol ships had been the easy part. Now came the real challenge, dealing with the mining facility and its 10,000 inhabitants. The facilities. Automated defense systems had detected the battle and were coming online. Plasma cannon turrets built into the mountain began tracking the human ship. Shield generators powered up to protect the installation's critical areas. Warning alarms echoed through the underground tunnels where the slaves worked. Facility defenses are active, Carter reported. 12 heavy plasma turrets, 6 missile batteries, and a planetary shield system. The Zephyrians had not expected their mining operation to ever be attacked, but they were not completely unprepared. The defense systems were old but still dangerous, capable of destroying small ships that got too close. Morrison studied the tactical display and made his decision. Take us in. Target the weapon systems first, then the shield generators. Avoid hitting the civilian areas. The Defiance dove toward the planet's surface, her hull heating up as she hit the upper atmosphere. The facility's plasma turrets opened fire, sending streams of superheated gas toward the human ship. Carter worked her controls frantically, calculating evasion patterns that would keep them alive. The human ship's shields flared as plasma bolts struck them, but the magnetic containment fields held. The Zephyrian weapons had been designed to fight other bioships, not the advanced energy shields that human scientists had developed. Davidson rerouted power from life support to weapons as the ship shook under enemy fire. Shields holding at 80%. We can take a few more hits. The Defiance's return fire was swift and precise. Railgun shots destroyed 3 plasma turrets in quick succession. Missile strikes took out the shield generators, leaving the facility defenseless. Within minutes, the mountain installation was burning, and its weapons were silent. Morrison opened a communication channel to the facility below. His voice carried across all frequencies as he spoke the words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. This is the United Nations Starship Defiance. We are humans from the Sol System. Your tyranny over the enslaved populations of this facility ends now. Surrender peacefully, and you will not be harmed. Resist, and you will face the full power of human military technology. In the depths of the mining facility, thousands of enslaved beings heard those words and dared to hope for the first time in generations. Freedom had come from the stars, carried by a species that most of them had never heard of. The Zephyrian overseers, faced with the destruction of their defenses and the loss of their patrol ships, had no choice but to surrender. The age of easy. Conquest was ending, and humanity had fired the first shot in a war that would reshape the galaxy. The news of the attack reached the Zephyrian capital world of Nexus Prime through their quantum communication network. The message traveled faster than light itself, carried by particles that existed in 2 places at once. Within 6 hours of the battle, Emperor Korthsan himself was reading the impossible report. The Emperor sat in his throne room, a vast chamber grown from a single piece of living crystal that pulsed with soft purple light. He was ancient even by Zephyrian standards, having ruled the Empire for over 800 years. His forearms moved slowly as he read the report again, trying to understand how 3 of his warships could have been defeated by a single unknown vessel. Korthsan had seen the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations during his long reign. He had watched his empire grow from a small collection of worlds to the dominant force in the galaxy. No species had successfully resisted Zephyrian expansion in over 2 centuries. The very idea that someone had attacked his forces and won was almost impossible to believe. "Summon Admiral Vextar," the Emperor commanded, his voice echoing through the crystal chamber. "Tell him to bring the 3rd battle fleet. We will investigate this ourselves." Admiral Vextar received the Emperor's command while reviewing patrol reports in his private quarters aboard the massive bioship Nethys Prime. He was younger than the Emperor, but still old by human standards, having served in the Imperial Navy for over 300 years. He had never lost a battle, never retreated from an enemy, never shown fear in the face of any opponent. But as he read the report from Kepler 7, something cold settled in his stomach. The description of the enemy vessel made no sense. A ship built from metal instead of grown from living tissue? Weapons that could disrupt bio-neural networks? It sounded like something from a nightmare rather than a real battle report. Within hours, Vextar had assembled the third battle fleet. 12 heavy bio-cruisers formed the core of the force, each one a living creature the size of a small moon. These ships had been bred for war over centuries, their hulls thick with armored scales and their weapons grown from the same genetic material as their bodies. Around them swam 36 escort vessels, smaller but still deadly bioships that moved through space like schools of predatory fish. The bioships were more than just vessels. They were part of a collective consciousness that linked every Zephyrian crew member to every other. When one ship was damaged, all the others felt its pain. When one ship died, the entire fleet mourned its passing. This neural network made them incredibly effective in battle, able to coordinate their movements without any need for radio communication. But it also made them vulnerable in ways they did not understand. Meanwhile, back at Kepler 7, Captain Morrison and his crew were working frantically to evacuate the enslaved populations from the mining facility. The job was harder than they had expected. 10,000 beings from 17 different species, many of whom had been slaves for so long they did not know how to be free. Chief Medical Officer Dan Walsh set up emergency treatment centers in the facility's main corridors. He was a thin man with gray hair and steady hands who had spent 20 years treating everything from battle wounds to alien diseases. Now he faced injuries that came from decades of harsh labor and poor treatment. Captain, Walsh reported over the communication system. Some of these people are in terrible condition. Malnutrition, untreated injuries, psychological trauma. They've been worked nearly to death. Morrison felt anger building in his chest as he walked through the facility's slave quarters. The living conditions were worse than anything he had seen in Earth's history books. Beings from across the galaxy had been packed into spaces barely large enough for humans, forced to work 18-hour shifts in dangerous conditions, fed just enough to keep them alive. Communications Officer Ben Taylor was having his own challenges. The freed slaves spoke dozens of different languages, used various methods of communication, and came from cultures that had no common ground except their shared suffering. Some communicated through sound, others through color changes in their skin, and still others through electrical fields that Taylor's equipment could barely detect. "I'm making progress," Taylor reported to Morrison. "The Universal Translator is learning their languages, but it's slow work. Many of these species haven't spoken their native tongues in generations." The evacuation was proceeding smoothly when Lieutenant Carter's sensors detected something that made her blood run cold. At the edge of the star system, space itself seemed to ripple and bend as 48 Zephyrian warships emerged from hyperspace. "Captain," Carter called out, her voice tight with tension. "We have incoming hostiles. It's a full battle fleet." Morrison rushed to the bridge and studied the tactical display. The enemy ships were arranged in a formation he recognized from intelligence reports. This was not a patrol or a reconnaissance mission. This was an invasion force sent to destroy whatever had dared to attack the Empire. Engineering Chief Davidson began emergency power-up procedures, routing all available energy to weapons and shields. "Captain, we've got maybe 20 minutes before they reach us." The evacuation isn't complete. Morrison faced an impossible choice. He could try to run, abandoning thousands of freed slaves to certain death when the Zephyrians retook the facility. Or he could stay and fight, knowing that one human ship against 48 alien warships was certain suicide. But as he looked at the tactical display, Morrison remembered something from his training. The Defiance had been designed specifically to fight bioships. Her weapons were experimental, based on scientific principles that the Zephyrians did not understand. Her shields used technology that organic vessels had never encountered. Maybe, just maybe, she could survive long enough to complete the evacuation. "All hands to battle stations," Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. "This is what we trained for. Earth is counting on us to show the galaxy that humans don't back down from a fight." Admiral Vextar stood in the brain chamber of his flagship, connected to the Nethys Prime through cables that ran directly into his nervous system. Through the ship's senses, he could see the human vessel clearly for the first time. It was smaller than any of his biocruisers, angular where his ships were curved, mechanical where his vessels were organic, but the energy readings coming from the human ship were unlike anything in the Zephyrian database. The vessel's power output was enormous, far greater than should be possible for something of its size. Its weapon signatures were completely unknown, based on scientific principles that Zephyrian science had never explored. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vextar felt something he had never experienced before. It was not quite fear, not yet, but it was close. Uncertainty, doubt, the possibility that his empire might not be as invincible as he had always believed. "All ships, prepare for battle," he commanded through the fleet's neural network. "We will destroy this primitive vessel and show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge the Empire." But even as he gave the order, Vextar could not shake the feeling that this battle would be different from all the others. The humans had already done the impossible once by defeating his patrol ships. What other surprises might they have waiting? As the two forces moved toward each other through the cold darkness of space, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The next few hours would determine whether the Zephyrian Empire would continue its reign of terror, or whether a new power had risen to challenge their dominance among the stars. The battle began when Admiral Vextar ordered his bioships to form their traditional hunting formation. The 48 vessels moved through space like a pack of wolves, each ship connected to the others through invisible neural links. The massive biocruisers took positions at the center, while the smaller escort ships spread out in a wide circle around the human vessel. Captain Morrison watched the alien formation on his tactical display and felt his heart rate increase. The Zephyrian ships moved with perfect coordination, their living hulls rippling with bioluminescent patterns as they communicated with each other. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "They're trying to surround us," Lieutenant Carter reported from her sensor station. "Standard Zephyrian pack hunting tactics. They'll try to hit us from all directions at once." Morrison nodded and turned to his helmsman. "Take us straight at their center. Full combat acceleration. Let's see how they handle a head-on charge." The Un's Defiance's fusion engines blazed too, life pushing the ship forward at speeds that would have crushed a normal human crew. But Morrison's people were not normal. They had been selected and trained for exactly this kind of impossible mission. As the ship accelerated toward the alien fleet, every crew member remained focused on their duties. Engineering. Chief Davidson watched his power readings climb as the fusion reactor pushed beyond normal operational limits. "Captain, I'm giving you everything she's got. Reactor at 120%. We can maintain this for maybe 30 minutes before we start damaging the core." "That's 30 minutes more than most ships would have," Morrison replied. "Make them count." The Zephyrian ships reacted to the human charge by tightening their formation. Admiral Vextar had expected the alien vessel to try to flee or maintain distance while fighting. A direct assault against superior numbers was either brave or stupid, and he was not sure which dot through his neural link to the Nethys Prime. Vextar could feel the excitement and bloodlust of his bioships. They had been bred for war, and they could sense that a real battle was finally beginning. Their living hulls pulsed with anticipation as they prepared to tear the human ship apart. "All vessels, prepare to engage," Vextar commanded through the Fleets shared consciousness. Launch hunter-killer organisms on my mark. The first exchange of fire lasted only 18 seconds, but it changed the course of galactic history forever. The Zephyrian bioships opened fire with swarms of living missiles. These were not mechanical weapons, but actual creatures that had been bred specifically for ship-to-ship combat. Each organism was the size of a small fighter craft, with its own brain, sensors, and explosive payload. They could think, adapt, and change their attack patterns in real time. Hundreds of these biomissiles streaked toward the Defiance like angry hornets. Their organic brains calculated intercept courses, while their living tissue absorbed and redirected sensor beams to avoid detection. It was a weapon system that had defeated every enemy the Zephyrians had ever faced, but humanity had prepared for exactly this kind of attack. Lieutenant Carter activated the Defiance's point defense grid with a single touch of her control panel. Across the ship's hull, dozens of small laser turrets came online and began tracking the incoming biomissiles. The targeting computers calculated firing solutions faster than any biological brain could process. The space around the human ship, filled with precisely targeted laser bursts that moved at the speed of light. Each shot lasted only a fraction of a second, but it was enough to vaporize the incoming organisms completely. The biomissiles tried to adapt their approach, but they could not think faster than quantum computers. In less than 10 seconds, every single living missile had been destroyed. The Zephyrian attack that had always been unstoppable was stopped cold. Admiral Vextar felt shock ripple through the fleet's neural network. None of his ships had ever seen their biomissiles defeated so completely. Through the shared consciousness, he could sense confusion and the first hints of fear from his biocruiser captains. But the human ship was not finished. Morrison had been waiting for exactly this moment. "Fire quantum torpedoes," he ordered. "Target their flagship." Engineering Chief Davidson had been waiting for this command. He rerouted power to the experimental quantum torpedo tubes, weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. The torpedoes used principles of quantum mechanics that most alien species did not understand, exploiting the uncertainty principle to phase in and out of normal space. The first quantum torpedo materialized inside the Nethys Prime's central nervous system and detonated. The explosion tore through the bioship's brain tissue like fire through paper. Admiral Vextar screamed as his neural connection to the vessel overloaded, sending waves of agony through his consciousness. But the real damage was not to the flagship. Alone, the bioship's death scream echoed through the neural network that connected the entire Zephyrian fleet. For the first time in their species' history, every ship in the formation experienced the death of another vessel through their shared consciousness. The psychological impact was devastating. 7 escort vessels broke formation immediately, their crews overwhelmed by the shared trauma of feeling their flagship die. The remaining ships tried to maintain their attack, but their perfect coordination had been shattered. Commander Lisa Brooks took advantage of the confusion to coordinate the Defiance's defensive systems. The Zephyrian bioships were firing their main weapons now, sending streams of bioplasma toward the human vessel. These were massive energy beams created by living organisms within the alien ships, designed to eat through conventional armor. Like acid. But the human ship's energy shields were not conventional. They were based on principles of controlled magnetic confinement that human scientists had developed for fusion reactors. The bioplasma, designed to dissolve metal and ceramic armor, simply dissipated harmlessly against the magnetic fields. "Shields holding at 90%, Davidson reported. "Their weapons can't penetrate our magnetic containment system." Morrison smiled grimly as he watched the tactical display. The Zephyrians had relied on the same weapons and tactics for centuries, never innovating because they had never needed to. Humanity had studied their methods and designed specific countermeasures for every known Zephyrian weapon system. The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. One by one, the alien bioships fell to human weapons they could not understand or defend against. Some tried to flee, but the Defiance's quantum torpedoes could phase through normal space to strike targets anywhere within the star system. Lieutenant Carter watched her tactical display as another Zephyrian cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash of dying bioluminescence. Captain, enemy formation is completely broken. 14 vessels destroyed, 12 severely damaged, and the rest are retreating. Morrison studied the sensor readings and made his decision. Let them go. We've sent our message. As the surviving Zephyrian ships limped away into hyperspace, they carried with them news that would shake the Empire to its foundations. A single human vessel had defeated a full battle fleet. The Zephyrian Navy, which had been invincible for 3 centuries, had been humbled by a species that most aliens had never heard of. The Defiance had suffered only minor damage to her outer hull plating. Her crew was tired but victorious. And across the galaxy, the balance of power had shifted forever. In the depths of space, Admiral Vextar floated in a medical pod aboard one of his surviving ships, his mind shattered by the neural feedback from his flagship's death. The Empire's greatest military leader would never fully recover from what he had experienced that day. The age of Zephyrian dominance was ending, and the age of human expansion had begun. News of the defeat at Kepler 7 spread through the Zephyrian Empire like wildfire. The quantum communication network that connected every major world carried the impossible message to billions of alien beings. A single human warship had destroyed an entire battle fleet. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries had been humbled by a species that most citizens had never heard of. Emperor Quarthson sat in his crystal throne room, reading report after report from across his vast domain. The news was getting worse by the hour. On 17 different worlds, enslaved populations were refusing to work. On 12 others, local governors were requesting additional military forces to maintain order. The word human was being whispered in slave quarters and worker camps throughout the empire. For the first time in 800 years of rule, Quarthson felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not fear of death, which was a simple thing that came to all living beings eventually. This was fear of change, fear of losing everything he had built, fear that his empire might not be as eternal as he had always believed. The Emperor activated his personal communication system and sent a message that had not been used in 50 years. He was calling for an emergency meeting of the High Council, summoning representatives from every major world in the Empire. If the human threat was as serious as it appeared, he would need advice from his wisest advisors. The Council Chamber was a marvel of Zephyrian bioengineering, grown from a single massive coral organism over the course of centuries. The living walls pulsed with soft light and displayed tactical information through bioluminescent patterns. Representatives from 200 worlds gathered in the vast space, their various alien forms creating a symphony of colors, sounds, and smells. General Nexter was among the first to arrive. He was the Empire's most experienced military commander, a veteran of dozens of conquest campaigns who had personally overseen the subjugation of 40 different species. He had never lost a battle, never retreated from an enemy, never shown mercy to those who opposed the Empire. But as he studied the tactical data from Kepler 7, Nexter felt his confidence beginning to crack. The human ship's capabilities made no sense according to everything he knew of warfare. Their weapons were based on principles that Zephyrian science had dismissed as theoretical impossibilities. Their shields used technology that organic vessels had never encountered. "Your Majesty," Nexter said when called upon to speak, I have reviewed the battle reports 17 times. The humans possess technological capabilities that we do not understand. Their single vessel defeated Admiral Vexstar's entire fleet using weapons and defensive systems that appear to violate the known laws of physics. Chief Science Advisor Yelmata stood to present her analysis. She was ancient, even by Zephyrian standards, her forearms moving slowly as she manipulated the holographic displays floating around the council chamber. Her specialty was studying alien technologies, and she had spent the past week analyzing every piece of data they had about the human ship. The enemy vessel represents a completely different approach to warfare, she explained to the assembled representatives. Where we have perfected biotechnology over millennia, the humans have advanced mechanical science to levels we never imagined possible. Their quantum processors can calculate faster than our bioneural networks. Their magnetic shields can deflect weapons that destroy conventional armor. Their quantum torpedoes can phase through normal space itself. Emperor Korthsane listened to the reports with growing unease. How many ships do the humans possess? Intelligence estimates indicate at least 40 similar vessels currently operational, Yelmata replied. But more disturbing is the rate at which their technology appears to be advancing. Analysis suggests their shipbuilding capabilities are expanding rapidly. The implications were staggering. If the humans could build more ships like the Defiance, they could potentially challenge Zephyrian control throughout the galaxy. The Empire's bioships were powerful, but they required decades to grow and train. Human vessels appeared to be manufactured in much shorter time frames. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the name Captain Morrison was becoming legend. In slave camps and worker colonies, beings who had never dared to hope for freedom whispered about the humans who had come from beyond the stars to challenge the Empire. The story grew with each telling, becoming more dramatic and inspiring with every retelling. On the mining world of Kepler-7, the evacuation had been completed successfully. 10,000 freed beings from 17 different species now lived in temporary shelters, while human engineers worked to establish permanent facilities. Communications Officer Ben Taylor had become something of a hero himself, having learned enough of each alien language to serve as translator and coordinator. Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of the converted mining facility, watching as human supply ships arrived with food, medical supplies, and equipment needed to establish a permanent colony. The former slaves were learning to live as free beings again, though the process was difficult for many who had known only bondage for generations. "Captain," Commander Brooks said as she joined him at the observation window, "we're receiving reports from Earth Command. 3 more human ships have engaged Zephyrian forces in other systems. All successful." Morrison nodded, but did not smile. Each victory brought them closer to a full-scale war with the Empire, and he knew that the Zephyrians would not continue to underestimate human capabilities. "How are our new friends adapting to freedom?" "Better than expected," Brooks replied. "Dr. Walsh says the medical conditions are improving rapidly with proper nutrition and care. Taylor reports that several species are requesting to join our military forces." That was an interesting development. The idea of a multi-species alliance against the Empire had always been part of Earth's long-term strategy, but Morrison had not expected it to happen so quickly. What's Earth Command's response? They're sending colonization ships and additional military vessels. The decision has been made to establish permanent human presence in this sector of space. Back on Nexus Prime, Emperor Korthsane faced the most difficult decision of his long reign. The Empire could attempt to negotiate with humanity, acknowledging them as equals for the first time in Zephyrian history. Such a move would be seen as weakness by many of his subjects and could lead to rebellions throughout the Empire. Alternatively, he could mobilize every bioship in the Imperial fleet for a massive assault on the human home system. It would be the largest military operation in galactic history, involving thousands of vessels and millions of crew members. But if it failed, the Empire would be left defenseless. "Your Majesty," General Nexter said during a private meeting, "I believe we must strike at their source. The humans appear to be expanding rapidly. If we allow them time to build more ships and establish more colonies, they may become too powerful to defeat." Chief Science Advisor Yelmata disagreed. "General, you are thinking like we have always thought. The humans have already demonstrated that our traditional approaches do not work against them. Perhaps it is time to consider ... alternatives." "You suggest negotiation?" the Emperor asked. "I suggest survival," Yelmata replied. "We have ruled through fear and superior force for centuries. But fear only works when your enemies believe you are invincible. The humans have shown the galaxy that we can be defeated." As they debated, reports continued to arrive of human activities throughout the Empire. A supply convoy had been intercepted near the Rigel system. A Zephyrian prison world had been liberated in the Centauri sector. Human ships were appearing in systems that had been under Imperial control for generations. The psychological impact was devastating. Across the Empire, Zephyrian citizens who had never known defeat were beginning to question their government's invincibility. Military commanders who had always relied on intimidation found themselves facing enemies who refused to be intimidated. Emperor Korthsen realized that regardless of what military action he chose, the damage was already done. The Empire had frozen in fear, and the fear was spreading like a disease through every level of society. The humans had not just won a battle, or destroyed some ships. They had shattered the myth of Zephyrian invincibility. For 300 years, the Empire had ruled because other species believed resistance was impossible. Now, for the first time, the galaxy was learning that the mighty Zephyrian Empire could bleed. And once people knew their oppressors could be defeated, revolution became inevitable. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.